and welcome to August's webinar. It is about the compliance mindset your company needs to scale. So thanks everyone for joining. We'll leave it a few minutes and see where everyone is tuning in from. So I'll send a little message. Tuning in. Where is everyone from? I'm Leah and I'm from England. Mihaela, where are you from?
I'm from Romania, but now I stay for 2 months. I'm working remotely from Barcelona, Spain.
Perfect, nice. Hello from Noblesville in the USA. Nice, thanks,
Nice.
Henry. Okay, cool. Well, as people start to head into the webinar and people can join as and when, thanks for joining today's session. So we're going to be diving into the topic. If you are a startup or a scale up, everyone's looking at the word compliance. And I'm really excited to be joined by Mihaela. She is a compliance and data protection specialist. So Mihaela, if you'd like to give the audience a little bit of knowledge about yourself.
Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for also putting this webinar together. And a warm welcome to everyone. About me a bit, I've been working in compliance field, in legal operation, and also in privacy for the last about 8 years in SaaS businesses and tech businesses. I have a background in law, done some masters in international digital law, also in European law. I have a vast experience in dealing with all sorts of industries and companies when it comes to compliance, privacy, and legal operation. So I've done a bit of everything, and I like being in house. Even though at my beginning of my career I've been more of a consultant, so doing stuff in house, I've noticed that they're best fit for me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today. So, I guess let's start with setting the foundation about compliance. I think people just want to sometimes tick boxes, and it's definitely more than that. So, Mihaela, what is compliance?
So compliance, I don't think is just about law, regulation, and guidelines and certification that companies have to follow in general. I feel like it's more about managing risks and setting the proper governance internally so that when a decision has to be made, the the executive team, the leadership team has to be informed of the risk. It's also about setting up proper operations in terms of compliance. And at the end, I think it's about creating that culture of responsibility and accountability in which a company can actually operate.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good way to describe what it is. So, why is it important that compliance also sort of covers these like accountability and governance and it's not just laws?
I think it's important because, as I said, it give you in for internal team. It's give you that that structure that people knows when the line is crossed from a leadership perspective, and it gives them predictability, and they do not feel that they have to invent the wheel every time they have a new situation in the company, because setting up a compliance framework is actually giving people a bit of structure. And also externally, I feel like it's giving customers, partners, and investor trust that your company, your startup can handle personal data or can handle contracts, or you are going to comply with your legal obligation that you have set in your documents, in your agreements. So I think it's at the end of the day, for me and how I see it, it's a trust enabler and not a blocker, how sometimes it's being seen.
Yeah, definitely. And especially for these startups and scale ups, I think it would be great to to bring in a poll here. I think you've done a really good example of explaining that, but I think it would be great to see sort of where the audience are at with that. So if everybody just wants to vote, we've just gone ahead and added the poll of how familiar are you with compliance. I think it's one of those things. I'll show it on the stage as well so people can see what people are voting. There's some other votes further down that might not show, but yeah, very familiar, somewhat familiar, heard of it but not sure, and just not at all. And I guess maybe that's why you've joined the webinar today. So if you are maybe somewhat familiar or maybe not sure, hopefully me and Mihaela can give you a little bit of guidance. So I'll remove that from the stage and give everyone the opportunity to vote as we go on from that. So thanks for that. Okay, cool. So yeah, I guess if we're...
I think that we have an interesting comment also here in the chat from Harry.
Oh,
Create
great.
framework in the work environment. I feel like this is true, because I feel like when the operation and the structure is not, and what the leadership team it's expecting, sometimes it can create the chaos in the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what sort of the foundation of compliance is. And I guess then when you are scaling and people are unfamiliar, why does compliance matter so much when you are scaling your business?
As I said, in my opinion, it's a growth enabler, and I've seen it in practice. It builds trust among customers and investors. It can also open doors to new markets, uh, and also in long term or even in short term can help you uh, avoid some costly mistakes, because sometimes when you do not take some measures at the beginning of your journey, it might be that on short term you have faster results, but on long term those fast results can cost more. As I said, I think that is also help creating efficiency and predictability along the team members, um, and people don't have to reinvent the wheel every time they are put in a difficult situation. And I've seen also in practice when there is a compliance framework, there are trainings, people know about those policies, and they are not just a checkbox somewhere, and we have those policies nice somewhere that no one knows where to take them from. I've seen that people people actually respect those policies, and also it's about more of a culture. They start to integrate that culture in their day-to-day operation and responsibilities. And I think that at the end of the day, this is actually expected from people, because you cannot micromanage, and you cannot chase people of in every task, in every responsibility that they have in their job, in the day-to-day job.
Absolutely. Do you have like an example of, say, where compliance has helped a company to, as you said, like maybe expand into new markets or something like this?
Yes, of course. So I think that the most common example is this GDPR point, that has this butterfly effect, that you need to demonstrate that you are compliant, even though you are not an EU based company. And I have worked with companies outside European Union that they were able to demonstrate the compliance, and they actually close the deal. But if they wouldn't have been able to demonstrate compliance, they wouldn't have able to close the deal with the EU based company. And they have built not just as a check box, it's also good to have those in place, if in case you have an internal complaint, you have an external complaint. So I feel like when we do not see compliance just as a checkbox, and you actually spend the time, not much time, because I know that in early stages of our startup, over scale up, It's more about business growth and taking more risks. Uh, but we need to find the proper balance between risks and compliance.
Yeah, no, definitely. Henry's also said here, business reputation takes a time to build up and earn, but lost in minutes if you are not sort of compliant there, and that everything that you've just said then can just sort of increases team members' retention. So yeah, I think that's a really great input, Henry. And yeah, Mihaela, you've definitely said that compliance definitely matters when you are scaling. I think it's at the forefront of that. So what are some of the say like must-haves that startups or scale-ups must have?
So, from what I've seen, especially in the tech and SaaS businesses, security certification. I think that nowadays, without the security certification, you might be in a weak spot. And either we are talking about the ISO 271 or a SOC 2. So, security certification. And I would make a comment here that I would think about security not a checkbox on an audit and just acquiring an audit. I would take security quite serious, especially nowadays. Then a must have regarding privacy laws. um, Either we are talking about GDPR, which is a must, the CCPA, or any other local privacy law that applies. um, I would say to standardize and have clear agreements with the customers, NDAs that are standardized and clear what you want to acquire from that NDA, from that agreement, SLA, if the case, and any standardized document that you can have. Internal policies, basic policies like code of conduct, um, whistleblowing, business ethics, basic policies that employees know what are expected from them and how to behave in their day-to-day task on a day-to-day basis, uh, and also some guidance for the decision maker, I would say. But I would say that this is more common for scale ups when things occur.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I think there's some, like that you sort of mentioned the different parts there. So you've got security, privacy, those sort of core policies, and then, yeah, the leadership. So is there like a certain certification do you think startups should maybe prioritize first? And why?
I think a SOC 2 or a ISO 271 for security purposes. And I would say that nowadays security it's one of the biggest risk of a company, and also one of the biggest liability that the company can have. Even a startup can have a data breach. Even a startup can have a ransomware attack. So that's why I would definitely invest in a security certification. Either it's ISO 271 or SOC 2. Those are the most common. Of
Yeah.
course, there are other security certification, but definitely I would invest in one of those.
Yeah, definitely. And Henry's also said there about the IT infrastructure. It's it's multifaceted subject. So by creating like a plan, a quarterly monitoring, weekly monitoring and reporting, then you can make sure that alongside the certification, you're going to be becoming more compliant as a startup and a scale up. And how do you sort of balance this like legal diligence with the speed if you are wanting to scale?
I think by standardizing your agreements, your NDAs, your SLA, standardize, then create playbooks for those documents, and I would also see. I would also recommend having good templates that are reflecting your business purposes and your business operation, not just some templates that are copy paste from somewhere. Because in startup I've seen this common mistake about standardizing contracts, which is either now we are doing with ChatGPT, or we have a template from a very good prestigious law firm, but it's not customized for our company. So I would standardize, but at the same time, I would have some money invested in the templates that would reflect the business, and then part of the playbook, I would see what clauses are negotiable and what are non-negotiable for me as a business, and what risk I can take.
Yeah, no, amazing. I think that playbook and template side of things is a great way to get it started, but making sure you are legally diligent while speeding and making sure that all those contracts are up to date and everything. So I guess we are speaking about startups and scale ups, but there's different variations. You can have an early stage, a growing, or sort of a scaling internationally startup, I guess. So is there sort of any important milestones or anything specific that perhaps startups at each stage of the journey should maybe focus on a little bit more, or maybe they are that's how it's going to be if it's part of sort of that journey to scaling?
In my opinion and how I seen it in practice, I feel like in a startup you should keep it simple, basic policies that reflects the actual operation of the company, and also clear agreements, SLA standard agreements. Those should be the basic documents that you should have from a compliance perspective as a startup. As you grow and you grow to a scale up, maybe I would add certification and more structure, internal trainings, because it doesn't matter if you have those policies if no one knows about them. Um, Doing at least once a year a security certification, a privacy certificate training for everyone in the company. Also, a training about the culture of the company and the policies, what is accepted, what is not accepted in the company. And I think that as you grow as a business, and maybe investors are going to come, maybe bigger material customers are going to come along your journey, I think that they are going to expect even roadmaps and documented compliance and evidence that your processes are actually working and they are applicable in your day-to-day operation.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think having it as a measurable source, that if somebody comes in and they can clearly see that these different things and compliances that you've got in place are actually working for the business, to make sure that, yeah, you are staying compliant. And I think it would be really great opportunity as well to see where people are up to in terms of the stage of their company. So if I just publish, it'd be great to find out, yeah, what stage your company is in. So do we have any early stages, growth? I can also publish this on the stage and we'll see who's jumping into that. Few different people, which is nice. So we've got the early stages, the growth, and obviously if you are scaling internationally, this is also a really great webinar for you as well. Okay, amazing. So I'll remove this from the stage and we can keep this poll open for anyone to vote on as well. It's great to know sort of our audiences so we can tailor our future webinars for that as well. Amazing. So yeah, I guess many startups at the early stage maybe then perhaps don't have all of these resources. I know as you've gone into in-house compliance team, the resources are there. But yeah, do you want us maybe walk us through that? So like these early stages that might not have the capabilities that the more sort of scale up and growth teams do have.
I've seen that founders often ask, should I hire an in-house consultant or use external consultants? I feel like in early stages, when there is no budget for this, consultants make more sense that you have someone on demand. But I would also recommend someone that is more knowledgeable about your business, that knows your operation, So for me, it's important when you go to external to actually know the business. That's, I think, one of the most important advices that I could offer. And as you grow, I think that the in-house might also become something that is going to add value to the company.
Yeah.
And I think that in early stages there is always going to be this budget concern. But I was actually thinking about before our webinar when I was preparing my notes that uh, I I attended a course regarding executive compliance, and there were just people that are handling million and multi-million uh, companies, and they are executive compliance, and actually they were having the same challenges like in a startup in-house, such as, oh, no one wants to give me the budget, no one is listening to me until things explode. So I have to admit that I was a bit surprised that even at that level, still there are challenges that are common among compliance specialists.
Yeah, I think that gives everyone a little bit of a reminder as well, especially that there's going to be growth, mature companies that are still um, maybe struggling and making sure that they don't have the resources, because the more the business is, the more people that you and data that you have to be compliant about. So it still is a really big task. And Henry also mentioned there about creating an internal communications program that updates the team members on maybe how the company is scaling and what the changes will look like, and making sure everyone feels included. I think for startups and stuff, it's really nice to make sure that everybody in the business is included in those different stages that you're going to be part of. I really like that. So, when do you think is maybe the right time for a startup to bring in an external consultant versus hiring in-house? Is there a moment which should maybe switch them, or is it dependent?
I feel like it depends on the industry, first of all, and the type of businesses that they have. For example, I would recommend, like, if there is a startup that it's in a regulated industry, to bring someone as soon as possible, or work with external consultants as soon as possible, because spending some dollars at the beginning might actually save you a lot on the long way. uh, Regarding, and also depends on the type of business, depends nowadays personal data, if you handling AI infrastructure also, I would say that nowadays is it's a must to have someone, unless at least give you a bit of roadmap of what exactly they would implement internally.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that is, it's completely dependent on where
Exactly.
you are and what the company is. Have you ever seen, say, a deal fall through, perhaps because compliance just wasn't in place?
Yes, I've seen quite a lot, especially when dealing with startups. So I have an example in mind, and I was working in a company. We were about to sign with a startup. For them, it was quite a material contract, but they weren't able to demonstrate compliance. They didn't even have a privacy notice, and they were handling. They were. It was an AI based tool that was actually processing sensitive personal data, and they weren't able to demonstrate not even alignment with the basic of GDPR. So of course that no one from the internal leadership wanted to sign with a company that doesn't have anything in terms of GDPR, of the data flow of anything. They had SOC 2 certification, but they weren't able to explain anything about that certification. They weren't able to have a conversation. They were telling us we had consultants and we don't know much about the certification. So I would also recommend, based on what I've seen, that it's important for you internally to understand, even though it's a certification, it's not that hard to understand why the consultant have implemented you what they have implemented. So it's important to understand why were those processes, those policies implemented, because they are useless if you don't know how to explain to a customer or to an investor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Henry's hit the nail on the head there, that they should be able to show you their documents and the testing evidence to prove that what they say and what they can do, as well as sort of, as you said there, if they don't have these things to prove the basics as such as GDPR, then it's going to completely stop you being able to scale. It's a whole strategy, not just a standalone tick box, as you said. And I guess there's definitely going to be some challenges along the way. Is there any sort of maybe specific challenges to a startup that they're going to face? I know you've mentioned a few, but
Budget. I would say the budget is the most challenging thing in compliance, especially in startups, but also scale ups and even corporation have this challenge when it comes to compliance. um, I would say sometimes if they are part of a regulated industry, the startup is part of the regulated industry, it might be that there are some complex requirements that they have to comply with. Um, and I feel like staying in reactive mode. What does it mean, reactive mode? It's having a certification or a compliance point like GDPR just because someone has asked for it. So what does it mean then? That means that you have to acquire it very fast. It creates chaos, and it can also delay day-to-day operation because everyone will have to focus on the certification or on that compliance that is going to be a major impact in the company. So now everyone is focusing on something that could have been avoided if we would have had a plan for compliance from the beginning, from
yeah,
early stages, I would say.
yeah, absolutely. So it feels like there is some challenges, almost like with this sort of reactive mode, like a firefighter sort of finds out
Exactly.
all the issues after they've already arose, which is sort of not what you want to be doing. And I think it'd be a good opportunity to check in with the audience after we've spoken about all the different sort of compliance challenges. Is there anything that maybe people are struggling with at the moment in terms of compliance? I'll show this one on the stage. So sorry again if it's gone a little bit off, but what is the biggest compliance challenge of your team? So we've got security, privacy, policies and governance, contracts and vendor risks, or just completely not sure at the moment. And this is exactly why you're coming on to this. Security, yeah, I guess as you mentioned for the startups, this could be something that they are wanting to make sure they are truly embedded in. I'll remove that one from the stage and let people to maybe have a little bit of a think about that one, because it's exactly why people are joining on to the webinar today. So okay, so we face like these challenges, but I guess there's obviously going to be some mistakes too. So what do you see as maybe some of the most damaging mistakes that startups can make with compliance?
uh, I think that the most common mistake, definitely, it's waiting until an investor or a client is asking for a certification,
Yeah.
because that time everyone becomes reactive, and they have a lot of this type of certification can have a lot of impact on the company, especially when you are just a few people. uh, so that's the first mistake that I've seen, and it's very common actually. The second mistake would be, in my opinion, copy pasting policies from the internet. Now they are written with ChatGPT, but copy pasting policies or have created by AI without actually customizing it for the company, which in long term can be very costly for the company. Also, I would say the third, no evidence and no documentation for what's happening in the company, uh, and maybe rely, but this is actually a good practice to rely on lawyers externally instead of building your own operational processes. So if they go to lawyers, that means that there is certain level of awareness when it comes to compliance. But those are, I think, the most common mistakes. But definitely waiting until an investor is asking you or a client for a certification, I think it's is the worst and also the most common.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's what you spoke about in the beginning, making sure that you're also understanding as well the compliance that you put forward, and then yeah, making sure that you're not just waiting, because this reactive mode is never going to work if you're wanting to scale efficiently. And then I know you've spoken about it, but sort of, is there somebody within the business that should own compliance from day to day?
I think that it depends on the size. Uh, but if there isn't someone internally in-house hired as a compliance specialist, I feel like it should be someone at the C level, maybe CO or CFO or CEO, because sometimes the decision needs to be taken at the leadership stage, and it needs to be an accountable person that is going to take those decisions.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that definitely works, especially in terms of startups, etc. There's going to be those high level C-suite people that are going to be able to help with that. And yeah, Henry has said vendors should help the startup because complying quickly, reduce the time to implement. The only other option is to lean on your own, which is time consuming and high risk. Yeah. So thank you, Henry.
Yes.
So yeah, I know we've spoken about this sort of firefighting element of when things start to go wrong and you're being reactive, but how do you move from this to sort of a scalable, compliant approach?
I think to scale, it's about standardize as much as possible your agreements with customers, your NDAs, your SLAs, or other documents that you have, to automate as much as possible. And now AI, it's a great tool that you can use to have centralized documents and also on hand when someone wants it, playbooks for your agreements, what is negotiable and what is non-negotiable, uh, and to have some experts if you need them. I think that that would be a great recipe for a great compliance foundation.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think those sort of four things are great. So sort of standardizing, automating, centralizing, and it will make sure that you are strategic with your scale. So I guess then how do you decide which contracts or processes should be standardized?
I would say that anything that it's used repeatedly by the company, sales contract, NDAs, SLA, data protection agreements. Uh, I think that standardization is going to save a huge amount of time and also reduce errors when uh, uh, when they are going to be signed.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, great. So I guess at sort of the top of this, we've been speaking about investors and partners. And I guess then they're not just looking at growth, they're also looking at compliance readiness. So, Mihaela, in your experience, what's maybe some of the things that investors are really looking for when we're talking all about compliance?
So when we're talking about the investors, I've seen that they are looking for evidence. It's about how and what you can demonstrate that you are compliant. And we can talk here about different certifications from ISO 271, Cyber Essentials, SOC 2, privacy compliance, different types of uh, governance policies, and also to demonstrate uh, to some extent a culture of accountability and responsibility. Uh, I think that investors are most interested to not see you as a risk factor for them. So if they invest in you, they want to be sure to some extent that you are going to be compliant with certain certification, or depends of course on the industry that you are doing business.
Yeah, great. I think that's a really good sort of starting point, especially for those people that are wanting to be compliant, and definitely in startups and scale ups, they're looking for those investors. So you need to look at this as sort of a hand in hand strategy, not just a standalone tick box. Okay, so as we sort of wrap things up and we can sort of head into any questions at the end, Mihaela, if you say we're speaking to a founder today and maybe that they're feeling like completely overwhelmed, what's some of the first steps that you'd recommend them to take?
I think that first I would talk with a specialist that can help me, give me a perspective of what I think I must have, good to have, and nice to have. So I would talk with a specialist that can give me sort of a roadmap of compliance, and also maybe set some realistic deadlines and some realistic approach to a roadmap. I know that sometimes compliance is something overlooked, and I feel like if we plan properly from the beginning, okay, I'm not going to have the ISO 271 certification in 3 months because I don't have the budget for it, but maybe put it for the next year as a goal to acquire ISO certification, so that when I'm in a position to close a material customer for me, it's not going to be a blocker. It's actually going to give me a competitive advantage because I have those certification and I have taken compliance more serious than my competitor, for example. For example.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, and that's what the startup world is all about. There's going to be a lot more competitors as you're starting out, trying to grow and trying to really be strategic, but making sure that you've got and leaning in on someone who is a specialist in the area, and having these need to haves and nice to haves is going to be a really good way without you feeling overwhelmed at the very beginning of this journey. Then, so I guess I sort of spoken through, yeah, the security, privacy policies, governance, and contracts. And startups will they'll always face these maybe budget limits and the complexity. But I guess, as you mentioned, with this roadmap and documentation, um, it's going to be sort of the right way to be able to support and be compliant whilst also being competitive and having that competitive advantage. So yeah, I think that's a really good way to sort of think about that. I'll let Mihaela if you've got sort of anything last bit that you want to say, but I'll let some of the Q&As come in now if you've got any sort of last minute bits, and I'll take a look at these now. Okay, so as we mentioned as well with the standardization, somebody has asked, where's that gone? How can we think about doing a template for our agreement for a startup?
I think this is a great question. I would take the template, go each clauses one by one, say this is negotiable and this is negotiable to this extent and this is non-negotiable for me as a business. So I would take each clause one by one and see what is negotiable and what is non-negotiable. And if we have negotiable clauses, for example, payment terms. Okay, What the standard? The standard is 14 days. We can negotiate for deals above 10K 30 days, for deals above 50K 45 days. I think that once you standardize this, because in practice 80% of the questions are going to be the same, so also building this playbook and this standardization document, it's also a live document that you are going to change as the business grow, as the business evolve. So this is how I would do it. I would stay with the business owner, with the business from different departments, and I would ask them, is this how you want to tackle this? Is this negotiable for us as a business? Is not negotiable? So this is how I would do it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Mihaela. We've just got another question, I guess, when we are talking about standardization, and then it might be a tough one, but if, say, you only had one resource to tackle one area, standardization, automation, and centralization, I know you covered those three things. Is there any that you would specifically prioritize first?
I think standardization, because first is going to we first are going to do an assessment. This is negotiable and non-negotiable for the business. So what we are doing when we assess this, it's actually our risk appetite as a company. We are willing to take this risk, or we are not willing to take this risk. Standardization, and also when you have something standardized, the business owner and mostly the sales team can actually negotiate, and they know how to negotiate deals with customers without you being present in every call with customer, and that gives them predictability, and they know from the start what they can negotiate with the customer and what they cannot negotiate with the customer. So in the long run, standardization is actually going to uh, make your operation more smoothly, is going to create more time for people to actually take care of the day-to-day tasks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're standardizing it and then automating it and making sure that standardized process is in place first, it's great. Way to sort of start that foundation. Thank you. And then just sort of a final one there. So I guess at what stage does it make sense to invest in automation tools for compliance rather than relying on manual tracking?
Nowadays that we have I would say from early stages, because instead of having someone internally, actually hiring an extra person, automation is going to give you that advantage that you don't have to do the repetitive tasks that no one wants to do, let's be honest. And one of the tasks that no one wants to do in any company are the RFP processes, request for proposal, those big risk assessment that sometimes you get 200 questions from a corporation to complete, and that can be done very easily through an AI tool that you are training for your own operation. And instead of spending actually months, 1 month, to do to respond to those kind of question, you can do it in days if you have an AI on hand. But I
Amazing.
also think that training the AI is also important, and of course you should have a person that is in charge of this, not just have a tool and then no one is updating the tool, the training data, and everything.
Yeah, because as sort of time goes on, standards change and the standardization, which you mentioned, needs to maybe be looked at. So making sure that someone is constantly measuring that and making sure, and AI is definitely going to help with the future of automation for these type of things. So yeah, I don't know if we've got anything else coming in. Just maybe sort of a little final comment from Henry. By define your business process, you can identify where automations make the most sense, and automation should be a force multiplier for team members that are already existing, which is exactly what we mentioned, having those specialists in place that can be utilize AI as a sort of force rather than the engine behind the specialists themselves. So yeah, thank you so much for everyone who's joined in today. Hopefully you've gained a little bit more knowledge from how these different standardizations and automations, etc., can really help to build a strategy towards your startup. So thank you to everyone who joined, and thank you again, of course, to Mihaela for sharing all of your experience and insights. There will be a little CTA here, so if you do want to get in touch with Mihaela, any questions, her email will be there, and on LinkedIn as well, she will be available. And if you are interested in also getting the demo, I will put that one to the side as well. So that is our remote first demo. So you can get access to these as well. Just reply to the email if you need any more details from us. And yeah, that would be amazing. So I'll move that so it's not on you. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Any further questions? And thanks, Charmaine, as well, for joining us today. But yeah, hopefully see you on the next webinar, and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.